Hello and welcome to the Metal Pack Pod, the industry's leading podcast for the global metal packaging market. The Metal Pack Pod is brought to you by the Metal Packager, the number one digital resource for the global metal packaging market. Our podcast was recently voted in the top 10 for packaging podcasts globally, so be sure to like our podcast and receive regular updates when the next episode drops. Today we have a special episode as we feature an engaging panel discussion on the transition to chromium-free passivation, CFP for short, in the metal packaging industry, focusing on lacquered tinplate for can manufacturing. We've collated an expert panel from raw material suppliers and can makers discussing technical progress, ongoing challenges and the need for standardised testing. While CFP adoption is advancing, hurdles still remain for certain applications and customer acceptance is currently cautious. The panel emphasised industry collaboration, rigorous qualification processes and the importance of clear communications about the benefits of metal packaging. This episode concludes with optimism for continued progress and a commitment to ongoing dialogue. On our panel we have from Eastman, Andy Morse, Tetrashield Business Director, Jake Goodrich, Technical Director. We have ThyssenKrupp's Dr. Heiner Schäfgen, Head of Technical Customer Services and CFPA Transition. And from Sonoco, we have David Hall, R&D Director. We are also lucky to obtain a comment from Sherwin-Williams' Suzanne, who leads the food packaging marketing sector, and she provides an update on the implications to the can coating side of the process. Please do like the podcast and share our episode. It really is most appreciated. Now on to the episode. I hope you enjoy. Good afternoon, guys, or I should say good morning to some of you the other side of the pond. I'm looking forward to an interesting discussion about the latest developments with regards to CFPA. Certainly as a non-technical guy within the metal packaging industry, I'm certainly looking forward to learning plenty from a panel of experts here. So I think a nice place to start. Perhaps Jake and Andy from the Eastman team, if you could perhaps give us a bit of a overview with regards to CFPA and where we are, and then we can bring in the other panelists as well. So looking forward to a good conversation.
Yeah, great. I can go ahead and get started. Jake Goodrich, I lead our technology development team for coatings at Eastman Chemical Company. And a big part of what we do is work on a lot of the raw materials innovations for the coatings industry to address some of the challenges, be it performance, be it regulatory, be it sustainability. So, we're very much part and parcel of helping the industry try to solve this challenge around CFPA. I'll allow others to give a little bit of background about this, but this is a situation where hexavalent chromium is being regulated out of the process in the passivation of tin plate, and that presents some different challenges, performance, adhesion issues, change issues in the industry that we have to work through. And here at Eastman, we're very focused and keyed in on the resin development aspect of trying to provide materials for CFPA.
Andy, is there anything else you can add there?
Sure. Glad to chime in. Andy Morse. I'm the Global Business Director for Tetrashield at Eastman, and it's a pleasure to be here talking about this topic. And I think what we really been thinking about on this was really related to removal of materials of concern. In that case, initially BPA, and so as the CFPA situation has presented itself, we've been glad to add to our portfolio there and really work on how these high TG polyesters can impact the situation that packagers are facing in order to bring a better coating.
David, I'd just like to bring you in here from a can maker's perspective. Just curious to find out from your point of view the potential implications here, and for your business, how serious are you taking this?
Yeah, so from a can making perspective, we're effectively changing everything we do in terms of steel packaging. The chromium passivation layer on tin plate and the coating on ECCS, electrochrome coated steel, tin-free steel, whatever you want to call it, is fundamental to the performance of the material. It's materials that have been around in the place of chrome passivated tin plate for tens of decades in ECCS for 50, 60 years. We're about making sure that we provide a product that's safe and works effectively. We need to qualify things and demonstrate that they work. So for us, it's a real challenge. We've been working on this with the steel manufacturers, with the coating manufacturers for best part of 10 years now. We've put a huge amount of time and resource into it, and we continue to do that because we're in the business of food safety. We put things in the market that aren't safe or are safe but don't look great, then our customers and consumers are not happy with it. So it's a really big challenge to us as can makers.
And David, with can makers, I know this is probably in the nicest possible way. It's a conservative market, and can makers don't like to make changes unless for good reasons. So how challenging is this to make such a substantial change? You said this has been kind of a decade in the making, so I'm guessing this isn't something you take lightly as an industry.
No, and it's not just can makers that are conservative. It's our customers they're very conservative. We're talking brands, we're talking retailers who don't want to put things in the market unless they're 100% safe, whatever 100% safe means. And nobody wants to be the first person to change something that they might not feel that they need to change. The other issue, I think, that without sounding like the harbinger of doom on this, is the CFPA material was chosen 6-7 years ago, whenever it was, as the best option. But it's not perfect. It's not a direct replacement for chromium passivation. There are some things about chromium passivation that you don't get with CFPA. CFPA is good for adhesion. It doesn't give the protection from sulfur stain resistance and some of the corrosion protection that you get from 311 passivation.
Thanks very much for that overview, David. And Heiner, from a raw materials perspective, with ThyssenKrupp, it'll be interesting to get your take on things.
Yeah, thank you for being here today. So I'm speaking here for Rüsselsheim as the world's largest tinplate manufacturer with a long history of producing tinplate. And yes, David is right in a lot of things when he's saying this is very mature product. The industry is an old industry, to be honest, and we are producing over 100 years tinplate now here. And the usage of chromium-6 has been well established, and so the complete industry has for sure established as processes and has a well knowledge about it. And every development has been in the past in lacquer developments and can manufacturing, and all the processes which we have learned are very versatile and different. So there's a lot of variances in all these processes for can manufacturing, filling, and so on. So this is a long process which has been taken. So a lot of experience is there in the industry, and now we have taken the steps for this fundamental change in passivation layer. And so it is only a small change, to be honest, because it's a tiny layer. But nevertheless, as David mentioned, this thing is the original purpose of a passivation layer is to prevent tin, which is a tin plate, is a steel plate, which is tinned. Everything the tin is food safe, and it has been historically used to making food cans. And so also any layer or anything which is put on the tin must be food safe. And so you have to figure out what can that be, and when you're looking for alternatives, especially these we found as during these times I was not involved, we found the best possible solution. The main focus is to make the main functionality of a passivation, which is preventing tin oxide from growing. So maintaining the quality of the tin plate during transport and storage for the further processing of the material, which is the main thing, is lacquering. Yeah. So of course there's more involved in the can making industry, and we have all learned that this is very complex.
We interrupt this episode for a brief interview segment from Sherwin-Williams' Global Marketing Director for Food, Suzanne Bloom. This segment emphasises ongoing innovation, collaboration with partners, and the progress being made towards full adoption of CFPA in metal packaging in terms of food can coatings. Enjoy. It's a nice opportunity perhaps for you to provide an overview about your thoughts with regards to CFPA and the current developments with metal packaging. The rest of the panel provided a nice overview. So from a Sherwin perspective, the floor is yours.
Sure. Yeah. So, I mean, from a coatings perspective, you do see a difference in coating performance sometimes with variations in the pretreatment. So, the CFPA transition from a coatings perspective is something very important and something that, we've invested, a lot of R&D in to try to make sure that we have solutions that, meet the changing market landscape. So, one of the things that we have, discovered is, performance of gold coatings specifically over chrome-free have some challenges with sulfur staining. So we've developed, high TG polyester solutions as well as our opaque gold, which both, help with the sulfur staining and we view as good solutions over the CFPA substrate. So white coatings, we don't see any differences in the performance over the CFPA, but specifically with the gold coatings, we do see some differences there. So there might be some color shade differences, but overall, like we are committed to bringing solutions to the market, and the coatings do play a critical role in the can. So making sure that we have good solutions for the new steel substrate is going to be really critical moving forward.
No, that certainly makes sense. So I'm just been from certainly CFPA standpoint. Why is this such an important issue for the industry? Certainly your industry, the coatings business.
Yeah, for sure. So the pretreatment is, really critical to how the coating, adheres to the metal substrate. It has a very big impact in performance. So any changes in pretreatment, we stay really close, with our customers and metal suppliers and other folks in the industry to, stay ahead of any, changes in pretreatment because, we do see that it does have the potential to be, really impactful over coating performance.
You mentioned there about this has a lot of potential. I think the key word there is potential. Absolutely. In terms of just to kind of, I know the guys on the call, the challenges was definitely an important area that they were looking to kind of explain. So just from your point of view, what are the kind of main barriers to entry at the moment with regards to CFPA? Is it the kind of the conservative nature of the chemical sector and the metal packaging sector as a whole, or is it just a case of just these things do take a lot of time?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it's it's probably kind of both. These things do take a lot of time, and just making sure that the industry as a whole is doing their part to make sure that their solutions are in place to meet these deadlines. I think is really critical, and just continuing to move it forward is going to be what we need to do.
Excellent. Yeah, I don't want to kind of focus on the potential challenges too much. I think definitely the opportunities, particularly for multifaceted coating technologies, I think sounds really, really exciting. So I think that's probably a nice opportunity for you to add value to this conversation from a Sherwin-Williams perspective.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, in terms of multifaceted coatings, we're, we have solutions that work over the CFPA, and we also, we're committed to, having solutions that meet regulatory needs. So, non-BPA, non-PFAS, staying ahead of any other, sort of materials of interest. And, making sure that we have solutions that will meet the needs of today as well as the future, because it's such a long qualification process. We know nobody wants to, continue to qualify a new coating every year or two. So, we're trying to make sure that our coatings, will stand the test of time and meet the needs of today as well as tomorrow.
Fine. So just moving on to just in terms of kind of looking ahead, what else still needs to be done in terms of kind of full implementation for kind of CFPA for metal packaging? Is there anything from a Sherwin perspective that still needs to be done, or do you think we're kind of well on the way in terms of the roadmap?
I think in terms of coatings, I think we're well on the way. I mean, we'll just need to, complete all the qualifications and, get the solutions qualified and, ensure that we have, robust offerings to bring to the market.
Question for the Eastman team here. I mean, in terms of the transition for the industry, I mean, how do you see this progressing for both your industry and also for your customers as well, and the challenges involved? I mean, there's so much we can unpack here in terms of sustainability, regulatory compliance, food safety. It's really unpacking Pandora's box here. This is from an outsider looking in. So from your perspective, I mean, what's how important is this transition?
What we're seeing there is that it's a transition that requires a lot of reformulation and then very extensive pack testing. And so I think there's the role we're trying to play there is really to provide a good basis of understanding of what the resin can do, and really how it's going to differ from what people are seeing in the market historically. And how they may formulate differently with it, what they can expect to see in that formulation. We have tremendous experience with polyesters and with these high TG polyesters, and so really what our big efforts have been is really helping the formulators think through those changes, and then prepare for the long pack tests, and also how to work through some of the pack testing and accelerated pack testing, how to interpret some of those results. So that's a big part of what we're trying to assist our customers with is really thinking through some of those changes on the formulation and what to expect.
And for your customers, are there any kind of misconceptions at the moment? I'm guessing it's very much holding their hands through a very complex process. So just from a kind of to play devil's advocate here, is there any kind of common misconceptions from your customers that you try and address? Because it's not just a simple transition. So there must be plenty that you have to kind of address as and when.
Yeah, I may add one, and Andy, touched on this. This is not a simple drop-in replacement. It may sound simple. You're replacing a thin layer of chromium passivation, but in actuality, there's a lot of complexity to it in terms of how the coating needs to perform to compensate from the difference in the passivation layer. So I think one misconception is, hey, standard solutions, we can just apply those broadly across the different packaging formats. Largely in some of the easy to medium to hold food packs, white coatings, that mentality can apply. But certainly when you get into gold coatings, you get into some of the high acid food packs, some of the high protein packs where you have sulfur staining propensity, as David mentioned. Then you really got to think carefully about the coating, and the coating and what large amount of the energy that Eastman puts into this is understanding how we can design resins that provide better barrier, better heat resistance, better chemical resistance, adhesion to that new CFPA steel layer. And so we've invested a lot of years, I would say, in trying to understand that and develop compliant solutions for this. And we've got several things underway. A lot of customers are evaluating the resins, showing good performance. But as others on this call have said, it's a very risk averse, time-consuming process where minimal 2 to 3 year cycle to test, formulate, trial, put things in pack before you really have the confidence.
And from your perspective, what's the biggest kind of barrier to entry here? Is it kind of the legislation, or the environmental issues, sustainability, or is it kind of a mix of all of those that are the challenges that you currently have? Yeah,
I'll just chime in on that. I think what I would say is actually probably just the timelines. and I think that's a significant topic as we think about the impact for brands, we think about the impact for can makers, even for formulators. There is a lot of elapsed time to understanding how these materials will perform. And so, and the necessity of a 2-year pack test tends to take 2 years. And so when you have a reality like that is really, coming at this with the mindset about, even with deadlines that might be a couple of years away, beginning the work on that, or moving forward the work on that, sometimes putting multiple materials in parallel into the framework of evaluation in order to be ready for what's coming.
David, on the can making side there, is there anything to add?
I was going to say on the timeline thing, I mean, if you're talking shelf life and stuff in Europe, most cans on shelves have a 4-year shelf life, because particularly, it comes about through vegetables where it's a seasonal product. Supermarkets don't like things going onto their shelves with less than 3/4 of the shelf life. So if you're packing in September, you're selling for the year. So stuff going on the shelves in June's almost a year old already. So you need to have 4 years. The best way of demonstrating something will last 4 years is to pack it for 4 years. We do accelerated testing, which is okay for a lot of things, but for the more aggressive things, as the guys from Eastman said, you need to be more certain. I think something that we need to consider here also is cost and what's happening in the market as a whole. The CFPA story is very much Europe focused. It's Europe legislation, so it's affecting the European tin plate manufacturers, but it's not affecting tin plate manufacturers outside Europe. So China, other Southeast Asian ones, even Turkey, where there are tin plate manufacturers now who will still be able to sell 311 passivated material, is a threat. And if for a cheap product, and we talked sulfur staining, and we protein containing products, of which the classic example is pet food. Nobody wants to spend a lot of money on their pet food packaging. So putting a high molecular weight, highly coloured aluminium or zinc pigmented to block sulfur staining onto something where somebody else can supply it with a cheap chromium passivation, which does the same job, is not going to wash. There's a big challenge there in the way that we approach the problem, because you can move things like non-easy open ends around the world very easily. So importing from components or material from China is going to be a big threat to the industry in Europe, which isn't being addressed by some of these coating changes. So to get that performance just by changing coatings, particularly when the big challenge here is not just tin plate. There's also the chrome coated steel, TFS, ECCS, where a lot of that is used for the sulfur staining products. If we can't make that, and we're nowhere near as advanced on replacing that as we are in replacing the chrome passivated tin plate, then that affects the whole industry, because that's going to be something where it's going to be easy to import from outside Europe.
Sorry, David, it's probably a nice opportunity to bring Heiner in there.
I think, there is a lot of things in this direction, that there is, of course, we have a global market, and the original idea was the REACH regulation from the European Commission, which is protecting human health and environment. And I think that is the right way to go, and we will follow this road, because that is chromium-6, which has been used in our production, is a cancerous substance, and we will not be using that in the future. So we are looking for these alternatives. I'm also thinking that even if it's not yet the case, but I think countries outside of Europe are also aware of these of harmful substances and are beginning to talk about that as well. So it brings up a time factor. So it means that there needs still to be experience. So, and Other than that, we are supplying already CFPA passivated material on standard basis for all kinds of application worldwide. So that does mean, yes, it is true that this is a European regulation, but nevertheless, customers worldwide are using our CFPA meanwhile. So, but again, it takes the time for qualification. And the applications which have been mentioned, so there are still some challenges. We have to face them. You have mentioned them already. That is a sulfate staining, which is there all the time, but it can be covered by lacquers, which are obviously more costly than the easy low layer gold layer lacquer. Of course, we are aware of that, but I'm sure that if you give it enough time to get mature, I see a good future for the product. Yeah. Because we have a lot of experience. I may say that we are selling more than 100,000 tons this year of this material worldwide. So, and it is working very good for our customers. Nevertheless, there are these challenges which have been named. Yeah, and we are not blind to ignore them.
I suppose the challenges are a positive, right? Because it means that it's keeping you keeping you on your toes. And I mean, obviously, cheap material from China and other jurisdictions must be a concern and something you're looking to leverage. And I suppose it's the quality and the service that you can provide is sets you apart from your competition.
Yeah. Of course, we are as Wasselstahl. We have always named ourselves as the quality leader or one of the major template supplier in the world, and I think we are renowned as this. And that is quality and service is our main focus, and we are not stepping away from that in any case. So it is very important for us that our products work in the industry. So it is important for the introduction of CFPA that we are all working together in the value chain. So it is that's why it is good to talk about today together also with Eastman, unfortunately, and the lacquer supplier and Sherwin Williams and the chem manufacturer Sonoco. To achieve this goal, which can only be reached together because of the complexity. We have talked about that already of these processes. Possibly it's not the complexity itself. I've been doing this a while now, and I've seen a lot of manufacturing of cans, and I've been visiting fillers, and I've been visiting various stages in this can manufacturing. So I think over the years with that mature product, everybody got used to it, and the chromium passivation is a very robust one. That's why it has been established decades ago, and turned out to be a very good one. And so everybody got used to it, and it is easy to handle. Yeah. So, and as you might know, something like this, which is performing that good, is difficult to replace. Yeah. And a future product takes its time to get mature because you have to the lacquers have to follow. Yeah? You start with the product, and lacquers have to follow, and resins have to be adjusted, and eventually, hopefully, with the time, as David, you're referencing to costs. I'm looking in the future so that possibly with new developments, all the costs will be going down, even if initial costs might be higher, as we have also to do a lot of investments in this matter, you know that. So, but we are committed to protect our workers and protect the environment. So Chrom 6 I don't see that Chrom 6 has any future in Europe. But again, we have to talk about the time window, which the time window is critical. How much time do we have? Officially, time is long over. That was in 2017 from the REACH regulation, but luckily we have the authorization regulations. So, but eventually these will run out or will change. We don't know yet, which is also not easy. So we must be prepared for it. That's at the end of the day. Yeah?
Absolutely. And what Heiner, what do you say? What else can the industry do to prepare? And do you think the industry is well prepared for this? Often we say the industry can be on the back foot with a lot of these changes. So do you think we are now in a decent position to proceed with such a challenge?
I think because it's not yet that we started yesterday. This is, we are talking about this some years, and so materials and samples and pack tests have been running, I think, since 2018. We are running a line since 2018. We have now 2 lines running. We could supply up to 50% of our portfolio with CFPA already, and we are preparing to be ready for 100% conversion. Nevertheless, the can making industry is making progress, but still a lot of pack tests are running and ongoing. And we still have a certain percentage of things which have been recognized during the pack tests, which are not yet solved and need to be worked on. Yeah. So this is clear. So I'm pretty sure that at least from our side, we could provide it with the necessary quality, with the necessary stability of the product, which is needed in the industry. And so that we can at least at a high percentage, 80 to 90% should be covered. But we are still facing issues about this. I will not argue about if it's 20 or 10% because it's not useful. I think it's okay when we argue that there are still challenges, and we have to work all together on this if you want to make it work. So it is. We are planning to be ready by the current sunset date, which is end of 27, to be ready with our production. What is the highest challenge currently, which I see, is that the industry is not 100% ready at this time. All this, despite all the packages and all the tests which have been made, because in the meantime, lacquers have been changed as well. Easy. I don't have to tell you this. The first things have been made with epoxies, and now there are no epoxies anymore, at least not in Europe and the US also. I think it's also BPNI, everything. So old pack tests are not valid anymore. You have to restart pack tests, and then you have these. I'm fully aware of this scenario, but what we can do is supply a stable and robust material, which has the quality which is needed and gives the main, as David also mentioned, the lackability is good. So wettability, so the processing is easy and good, but due to a different chemistry, you are encountering during sterilization processes with different lacquers, you are experiencing things which have been, I think, 10 years ago. We didn't expect that, to be honest. Yeah.
Thanks. I just want to bring in the Andy and Jake from Eastman there. Heiner very succinctly there mentioned about the fact the industry can be slow on the uptake in terms of transitioning to new technologies. Is that a problem for you guys? And if so, is there anything you're doing to help the supply chain kind of understand this and move things along? Because from an outsider looking in, the time scales here just seem kind of astronomical. But I'm guessing this is I work in the publishing sector where we live in the era of clickbait technology and trying to get that message out there as quickly as possible. And that's probably a conversation for another time. But in terms of kind of the timescale that we have here, is this a concern, do you think, for the industry as a whole, or do you just think this is kind of common procedure for such a complex bit of regulation and innovation?
Yeah, well, I'll start. Jake, you may have some things to add, but I think, and I think Heiner touched on this. One of the complexities that I think a lot of formulators and can makers are dealing with here is that you have multiple changes that have happened within the course of a few years, and so you think about the transition away from BPA, and so as Heiner indicated. The initial pack tests may have been using a BPA epoxy, which then was no longer really a viable candidate, and so that's something that changed. You have other materials of concern that are, quite a bit in the news and quite a bit in the press, and of course the pace at which consumers get information is also changing, and where they get their information has changed a lot. I mean, I think BPA may have been one of the first chemistries in modern times where really the drive came on a material of concern, really came very much started from the consumer and from the ground up, not so much from a regulatory standpoint. And that continues with other materials of concern. So I think the way that we've been trying to address that is in terms of really working with formulators and can makers on the fundamentals of what we know about the materials. And I think because of our history with the resins, that's how we've been trying to step in there, is to try to provide things like starting point formulations, and to provide things like data on the characterization of the resins, in order to help folks who are formulating be able to move more quickly. Because as you say, these time scales, they seem quite long when at first blush, but then when you have to think through lots of different formulation permutations and then get all those into long-term pack tests, it does take a lot of time and consume a lot of time. So we've been trying to work on the front end to provide as much information as we can, so that there's a jump on what material performance people are likely to see.
I just want to touch upon that. You talked about in formulations the data analytics side of things. I know it's AI automation and kind of the data at our disposal now has certainly transformed industries. From Eastman's point of view, are you kind of leveraging those new kind of opportunities, and how does that essentially impact something such as CFPA? I'm just it wasn't a question that I was going to ask, so apologies for jumping on you with that, but I just thought it was kind of interesting, particularly as it's very much a topical point for our industry at the moment, leveraging kind of AI and certainly automation and particularly data analytics.
Yeah, Alex, it's a good question, and something that we've really embraced here at Eastman is AI. And I'll tell you, the primary place where we've been able to use this is in terms of the resin development. Is you can imagine, particularly polyesters, there's any number of monomers and branching and end groups and different structures that you could design in to target a certain set of performance criteria that you're going for. So a lot of where we've used AI has been in machine learning, has been in the earlier development stages of, how do we tune the resin that has, the right chemical resistance, the right glass transition temperature, the right properties to function in, can applications for some of these aggressive food packs that we're really targeting with our Tetrashield. So, we've used it on the resin development side. We've also used it on the formulation side as well to help us understand, different component interactions, what other, co-resin systems does our material, best blend with. So, AI has been, very much part and parcel of our development for, Tetrashield resin systems and how we look at not only CFPA, but also some of the BPNI resins we've developed. And I was just going to pile on to Andy's comments too. With Tetrashield, we're at a point where we've developed that material. It is now commercially available. It's not the only solution here for CFPA. There's other, high TG polyester resins that are out there that, other suppliers, formulators have in their portfolio. But it is one of them. And we're past, I would say, the Gen 1 development stage, and now we're into more of the deployment stage, where, as Andy said, we're working very closely with customers throughout the value chain to evaluate, test, develop starting point formulations to validate how those resins can best work, and then put them into packs. So when you think about the timing, I think the development phase is behind us. There's always opportunity to improve on, Gen 2, Gen 3 products. But I think now it's, a lot of the tough work of, making the change, working together, putting things into pack, and, being diligent about that. I think that's a next critical step of what the industry needs to do to be ready for this.
Thanks for bringing up Tetrashield there. So for our listeners, if you want a little bit of background information behind Tetrashield, you should check out our podcast that we did with Alain Cagnard from Eastman. That was a couple of years ago now. So we'll include the link to the previous episode in our show notes, and that gives you a little bit of background behind the information there. So no, thanks for bringing that up. David, just want to bring you in here. We're talking about the Eastman guys there talked about kind of using the modern kind of technology and the likes of AI at our disposal. And I just wondered a kind of a cautionary note. I mean, I've seen certainly on social media channels recently kind of the rise of wellness influencers, social media commentators that are bringing up issues such as BPA again, saying that food cans are potentially unsafe as a result of BPA and other issues really. So I just wondered how kind of you're looking to leverage the potential obviously opportunities of social media to bring changes about and bringing the information out there. But I just wondered, are you kind of using these tools and how as an industry we can kind of leverage these different forms of communication, because it's not as simple as just putting a press release out there in this day and age. We need to be certainly from an end user point of view, communicating the message and a positive message, certainly of metal packaging, why it's infinitely recyclable, but why also there's other positivities when it comes to certainly for beverage cans, but obviously the conversation we're having here about food cans and its technology. So sorry, there's a few kind of loaded questions there, but it would be good just to get a bit of an overview from yourself about kind of the cautions of modern technology.
The new legislation on BPA in Europe, where we're having to remove it from external coatings as well, is a challenge. You know, we use epoxies on externals because they're hard wearing. Removing those reduces a little bit of extra BPA contact for an awful lot of extra work. But we will be there and we will be ready with that. The issue we have is that we're doing this at the same time as we're trying to replace the chromium passivation on the tin plate and try to remove the chromium coating on ECCS. So we're changing two things that in terms of performance are generally good for two things that are potentially not so good. You know, tin plate rather than ECCS and polyesters rather than epoxies. It doesn't matter how good your polyesters are, they're not going to be as hard wearing as a thermoset epoxy will be. It's an interesting challenge.
Yeah.
It's
If I may step in here, David, because it's you're right, because you have 60 years chromium technology and template manufacturing and 50 years epoxy technology. And to make, I would say, this hasn't been changed because it was a very, very stable, robust working systems which could fulfill anything which is there in the market. And now you change both things. And I think it's correct that it is difficult to find equivalent replacements in this quite short period of time. Although some other people might think that it's a short time when you're talking about 10 years or something, but in development of these fundamental things, I think 10 years with all the evaluation steps you have to take, and which has to include the pack testing, is a very short time. I was not thinking, to be honest, when I started to do this, I was not aware that this is so time consuming. But it is, you wake up in the next morning and then you have, it's again 2 years later. Yes, that is a big, I think for this industry, which is relying on safety, food safety and robustness of the packaging, because the consumers, it is the packaging which is thrown away later for the most consumers. And they need safe packaging. And we as an industry, all of us as an industry are in this position to make sure that there is a safe packaging. And neither of us can do this alone. We have to do that together. So this is a mixture of both. And again, currently the challenge is to introducing these new changes with new systems and maintaining all this packaging stability, robustness, and safety. I think safety is not an issue. because all the products have food safety appliance. We have FDA, CFPA has FDA and EU application, and the lacquers as well. So it's not the individual things or the individual ingredients, but the whole package has to work and has to work reliable. And for this, again, I think the time to get enough experience and the time for the development, as you've been mentioning, you are now in the third generation, and you made a lot of experience with the first and second generation, also not working perfectly from the beginning. Yeah, so I think that is the challenge we are facing, and we have to do it together.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that we've mentioned safety 2 or 3 times in the last couple of conversations, and you were talking about social media. One of the things I think as an industry, metal packaging's never been great at is publicity and selling the story that we have about reducing food waste, providing a safe, long shelf life product without the requirement for extra energy and all these things. You don't need freezers. You can store things at room temperature, and you can store them for a very long time. Vegetables, so you can eat them out of season. Fruit, so you can eat it out of season. We're engaged with the trade organisations and social media campaigns, but it's very difficult to get their message across without somebody picking it up and going with it. Metal packaging is not seen as a particularly attractive and sexy proposition compared to some things in plastic and pouches and other stuff which are got a much worse environmental and sustainability footprint. And it's an industry problem, I think.
Very good point, David. I mean, and also who's going to be driving this communication, because many companies within the sector are in multiple industries. So they're obviously going to have vested interest in other materials. So who's going to be driving that metal packaging is the material of choice. And I think that's the big challenge the industry has. And I think certainly I've been in the industry for 15 plus years now, and it's always been a case of kind of gentlemanly fair play, not to kind of certainly knock other packaging formats, and perhaps that's not necessarily the way to go, but trying to be a little bit more assertive when it comes to that marketing message. And I just wondered, that as we're having this conversation now, is that something that you're mindful of as well? And do you think the industry should be doing more?
I'm not entirely sure customers and consumers understand the difference between recycling a tin plate or aluminium can. There's recycling and there's recycling. And that's something I think that as an industry, through trade bodies, through communication and stuff, we need to be better at as an industry. We're not really fighting against our can-making competitors, I don't think. We're fighting against other formats that have been better at pushing those messages.
And also we're living in times, the last few years, we've had inflationary pressures and cost versus sustainability. Costs will always win the day. I mean, the consumer will, I believe, like to make a sustainable choice, but ultimately it depends on the price of a product. And I think we've been having that challenge at the moment. So it's a complex set of circumstances, but I think getting that message out there is crucial in driving the change. But I just wanted perhaps just a bit of a summary of where we are and what's still needed for CFPA implementation. I mean, who best placed to start? I mean, the guys at Eastman. That's probably if you could just perhaps provide us with a bit of an overview from what you need and where we are as an industry, because we've had a lot of kind of cautionary tales here, and it's not all doom and gloom, is it?
No, I can take a start, and Andy jump in. I mean, I think we've covered here, the rationale of why the regulations and movement towards CFPA. I think, most everybody would agree this is a good thing for society, for health, the environment. It's yet another challenge the industry has been resilient to work through. We've talked about BPA. We've talked about, we didn't mention maybe peripherally PFAS is another regulation the industry's worked through. I think the industry is resilient and will find a way forward. And, I think this is a good thing that is happening ultimately. There are solutions that are out there and available. We talked about a couple of them from the high TG type resin materials. There's other ways of, coating cans thicker, multi-layers, not all are the most economical. But there are solutions out there. And I think what, we'd really like to emphasize is, the industry needs to take the next step of just start moving forward, put things in test, start evaluating, establish proof points. This is a conservative industry, so people are going to point to where there's success cases, and we need to create those success stories today to get the industry moving and ready. And, I think it's been emphasized here many times, we're not alone. Nobody should feel alone. It's a big, collaborative industry group, I think, across the value chain. When you think about raw material suppliers all the way down to the brands and fillers. So let's leverage each other. We each have our, own areas of expertise. I'm not a steel expert, but I know Heiner and his team are steel experts, and David are packaging experts, and I think just it takes close collaboration, working together, and I think this industry will be successful in going through this challenge, and I'm confident it'll happen without trade-offs in food safety or performance, and cost. I think will average itself out over time, and in the industry it'll be in a good place.
And Andy, is there any closing thoughts from you there?
Yeah, I think that the only thing I'll add to that is, there was a time, certainly in our part of the industry, in the upstream, materials part of the value chain, where innovations were created and they were sort of put on the market, and there was an opportunity for people to sort of come find them and figure out how to use them. And I think one thing that, and Jake touched on this, but that has been really an important change is really a lot more willingness and excitement about engaging downstream and really helping people to try and understand how the materials work and what they bring to the table. So that because, certainly from where we sit, we know that formulators have a huge job to do and a lot of different variables that they have to deal with. And so, we have really taken on probably a much bigger responsibility and investment than we might have in the past, to say, how do we help these formulators to have the information that they need, to have the samples and data and test panels and different things like this, so that they can really try and manage through some of those variables that they have to deal with. So I think that's a positive, but certainly lots of different changes that are underway here. And so, I think that engagement and the collaboration is necessary.
Excellent. And Heiner, just to bring in you from a raw materials side, is there anything else needed from your perspective?
Of course, we are expecting a higher conversion rate, but I think now we have more than 6 years experiencing in serious production of CFPA. We are transferring the technology currently to all our tinning lines. So we have great confidence in our product, and with the feedback we have received up to now from the market, we are pretty aware that there are still pack tests ongoing and that there are new lacquers being used currently. So I think industry needs more confidence in the product. I can just confirm that it's working. It's not yet, unfortunately, you cannot say if it's working at place A, you cannot use it at place B, probably, which is an issue in this industry. I think that it's because we have now unified test procedure or now unified release procedure. I think David or all the guys from Eastman will confirm this. So it's a lot of things that have been considered, which leads that your industry needs to do this kind of pack testing to ensure integrity of the packaging for certain filling goods or for certain processes, which is slowing things down. I think it would be easier if there would be a process to say, okay, if it's working in this scenario, it's working everywhere, but unfortunately, this is not available. So that would be a great invention, I think, for the industry to find out, is there something which could say, if you this test is working, then you can be confident to using the package. I think that would help. So I can say from our side, we are ready to supply the product in the needed quality and stability, and also in the needed volumes for the market. That's what I can say.
I appreciate that input, and yeah, David, just happy to let you have the kind of the final word here. It's just from your perspective. I know we've spoke about a lot of the challenges, but overall, are you optimistic for implementation here?
So I need to put a bit of context onto it. So obviously, this we're talking here about lacquered tin plate. For lacquered tin plate, as Heiner said, whether we talk about 80 or 90% of products, we're in a position where we're confident. Lacquered tin plate is not 100% of our market. There's an issue with CFPA for non-coated tin plate, which is something that's a handicap to conversion. It's not what we focused on today, but that is an issue. And we've also got chrome coated steel. I mentioned it a couple of times. The steel industry has been very good at working together on a universal solution for passivated tin plate, but not for chrome coated steel. So there's a couple of things there that are outside the scope of what we're talking about here, but are really, really significant, and probably more significant than CFPA. CFPA, with the efforts that the polymer manufacturers and the coating suppliers have put into it, where we are now compared to where we were 5 years ago, was a massive step forward. Fully get that. We've got things now where we've got epoxy coatings on components that 5 years ago we would not have been able to sell. Absolutely big step made forward. And for CFPA, like I said, 80% of the things that we use tin plate for, we can use CFPA for. Getting some of our customers to move is a challenge, because they want somebody else to prove that it works, and if everybody wants for somebody else to move, nobody moves. And that is something that we're working on, and we're in a lot of conversation with big fillers, with their customers as well, as to what it all means. They don't see why they need to move before 2027 if that's when the conversion date is. That's been a challenge. We're working very hard on it. We've got a big team working on coating development and qualification, and it's all focused on chrome-free material. But we don't have a solution for ECCS. The welded cans for vegetables, for tomatoes, for a lot of things would be fine. Very low risk, safe. The coatings have improved absolutely. If we talk aggressive products, if we talk pet food, if we talk stuff where sulfur staining is a challenge, we're not there yet. Passivated tin plate, 80%, 90%, however you want to put it, we have solutions, but that's not by any stretch of the imagination the whole metal packaging market. We need things that work for the things that don't work at the moment, and that involves resin manufacturers and coating suppliers making materials that are resistant to the things that we struggle with now, so acidic products, sulfur staining. It needs the tin plate manufacturers to engage on what we do with non-coated tin plate, because that's a market that we're struggling with now, where we get issues with powdered infant formula. And there needs to be an acknowledgement of this threat for the cheaper end of the market, where we have at the moment we have a thin epoxy coating on a chrome coated steel substrate, which will be able to be imported from outside Europe, where no solution with tin plate and our coating would be cost effective. And in the short term, medium term, that's going to be a problem to the industry. So there's been a lot of good work, and everybody said it. We've got to work as a supply chain on this. We have to acknowledge the length of time it takes to get things qualified with customers. That we're conservative, our customers are very conservative. It's about food safety. We also need, as you alluded to earlier, to get a message across better to the public as to how good a product we have in metal packaging in terms of preventing food waste, a high shelf life, high nutritious products.
Absolutely. No, thanks very much for that overview. And certainly my takeaway here is collaboration and communication here are key, and having conversations like this, I think, can only enhance the communication, the conversations we're having. So, I think that's a nice place to conclude. Certainly we'll include a few links to some interesting material in the show notes afterwards. So no, thanks all for a really interesting conversation. I've certainly learned a lot. So no, I appreciate your time, and perhaps we'll check in again in a few months' time to see where we're at. So no, appreciate your time.